You're listening to That Gratitude Guy podcast with David George Brooke. That Gratitude Guy. Learn about how gratitude turns what you have into enough through stories of motivation and inspiration. Wherever you are in your life and whatever you're going through, That Gratitude Guy is here to help you achieve great things and live a happier, healthier life. Change the way you live today right here with David George Brooke. That Gratitude Guy, starting now.
Well, hi, everyone. Yes, welcome to That Gratitude Guy podcast. I'm, in fact, David George Brooke, That Gratitude Guy, your host. And where I tell people my mission is to have guests that relate and recall moments of their lives that were propelled and energized by utilizing the power of a gratitude mindset. That's my favorite word. The goal is to harness the power of gratitude and illustrate its many benefits. So you can expect a little bit of a deeper dive into gratitude's immense power, a gratitude tip from the show, a gratitude nugget, how you can become a gratitude believer, and then hopefully 1 to 3 takeaways from the show and my guest. And the show is broadcast on Transformation Talk Radio on the first and third Fridays of the month at 12:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. However, big news here, I will be taking the month of May off for a variety of things that have come up. And starting in June 4th to be exact, I'll be starting my podcast every single Friday at 12:30 p.m., which I'm very excited about with some of the guests like Jennifer today that I've had and been able to secure. I've decided once a week would even be better to spread that word of gratitude. And I do keynote speaking and gratitude coaching. You can reach me at thatgratitudeguy.com or David at thatgratitudeguy.com on email. The social media links and the information is in the show notes below. So let me get to my guest and introduce you. And I was thinking some of the things in the bio of Miss Jennifer Matthews, all the way from Perth, Australia. This could be a whole show just going through her bio. So let me just take a few minutes to explain this to you. Jennifer Matthews is the founder and creator of the Super Conscious Success platform. She's a spiritual coach, law of attraction practitioner, author, naturopath, and co-host of her upcoming podcast, Super Conscious Success, Your Spiritual Shift from Fat to Fit Wellness, if you will. And she's the host of her Super Conscious Success Summit series, which she'll be holding throughout 2021. I think there's 6 in all. On a personal level, she's the mother of 2 teenagers, a wife to a crazy scientist who I've never met, but looking forward to that one of these days. And as I mentioned, lives all the way in Perth, Australia. So thank you, Jen, for getting up at 3:30 in the morning to be on the podcast. Her purpose and mission in life is to help others expand their consciousness by connecting with Source and with their higher selves. Jen believes that in order to obtain pure peace and wellness, you need to look after your body, mind, and spirit. And she will help you to do just that with the help of all the resources that she has available to you. Jen, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, David. Thanks so much for having me here. And I am absolutely blessed to be up at 3:30 in the morning to talk to you and to hopefully share a bit of wisdom and a little bit of insight into who I am and what part gratitude has played in my life.
Excellent. I couldn't have said it better myself. And I always like to give the listening audience a little bit of context. So we just talked about it off air, but tell everybody listening how you and I met.
Wow. Okay. So this was going back 3-4 years now. And I was running the Living Your Intentions podcast. And you were one of my very first guests on that podcast. And the moment we met, we instantly clicked, and we've been friends for the last 4 years, where we catch up every week. We were part of a mastermind that I put together and I ran with a number of other people. And it's been a great journey to see the growth that has happened in your life as well as in mine throughout those 4 years. So I am incredibly blessed. My journey as a spiritual coach and as a naturopath has kind of changed. I don't know whether you want me to go into that or whether there's something else.
We will in a second, Jen. I would like to just back up because that was Living Your Intention. What was sort of the format of that original podcast? Because now I know it's the Super Conscious Success Summits and so forth. But just to step back, because I remember in the meeting being so impressed when you first met me, and I think you Googled me or something. But what was kind of the intention for the Living Your Intention podcast?
Yeah, well, I was having 2 teenagers, as you said. I'm a naturopath, and I spent 15 years as a naturopath. working online in the health field. And I absolutely loved it. But I was, around that time, I was starting to really get involved in more of the mindset work. And I woke up one morning and I just realized that I was no longer passionate in the way that I was about the health field online. What I was doing, the business I was building, the whole platform that I was building, I felt that something was missing, and I realized that my passion was really in mindset, and it was in how we can actually use our minds to create a better world for ourselves, to create a better life, to set goals, to set intentions, which sort of explains the name Living Your Intention, because it was about me bringing together a whole lot of mindset experts that really devote their life to teaching others to be able to expand that mindset and to be able to be the best versions of themselves. And that was fantastic. And I met some incredible people during that time, including yourself, David, and a number of other people that I interviewed. And it was a really hard time at that point, because I had spent so long building this other platform. And to let go of something that you've spent so long building up was tough. But when you really listen deep inside and you go, okay, well, I don't think that's where my purpose is anymore, then you let go of that and we pivot to a different journey in our life. So I started Living Your Intention, and that was fantastic. And I had an awesome time with that. And I think I did something like 70 odd interviews on that podcast.
Oh, wow.
And brought together some incredible people. And it was just the start of my journey.
Yeah.
And I think every place that we're in puts us one step closer to our ultimate purpose in life, and as I call my life mission.
And I love that. Oh,
Yep.
Sorry, Jen. I just love the fact when you mentioned no longer passionate about it, sort of like just having such a level of self-awareness where, I did this worked for a while, and whoever invented the term been there, done that. I think that's happened with a lot of us. We were all excited. I thought you were all excited about this Living Your Intention. Now you're doing something different, but no longer passionate. And you said something was missing. Can you speak to, I know it's always hard to quantify these things, that maybe what was at the top of the list that was missing? I'm sure there were many things, but was there something at the top of the list?
When I went towards Living Your Intention, you mean?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it was kind of a strange feeling, because I remember one night I went to bed and I had done some work on, because I wrote 8 books while doing my naturopathic, 2 courses, 8 books. I'd really put everything into it. And I was working on it. I think I was recording a podcast, and I had kind of lost that spark, that enthusiasm, that like I want to get up in the morning and I want to be able to just get stuck straight back into it. And I woke up the next morning and it felt heavy. There was something like I just didn't want to do it anymore. It wasn't what I was passionate about anymore. And so I had to sort of delve inside and go, what is it that I would like to be doing that would give me that spark back? And that's when mindset came up. That's when I started going, the part of my business, because I was in my previous health field, I was also interviewing people. And so I was interviewing experts on health and nutrition and fitness and all of that. And so I kind of was already surrounded by people that were positive and they were optimistic, but I was finding that the nutrition field was so convoluted and there were so many different opinions as to what's right and what's wrong and what you should be doing and what you shouldn't be doing. And if you said the wrong thing, then all of a sudden they would blow up about it. So it just didn't float my boat anymore. I wasn't passionate about it. And then I realized that mindset was where it was at. So it was kind of like just a knowing.
Yeah. And I think too, with 2020 with the pandemic, and now we're in 2021, of course, one of the words you hear that gets used a little bit too much now is pivot, but it's still a good word in somebody changing direction or what have you. But I think about all the skill sets that you have and all the things you've done. And I'm always looking for a nugget or two that I can leave the audience with at the end of the podcast. But you're just the perfect person to ask this question. I know we've talked offline about this before, but maybe for the benefit of the audience, I just flat do not understand why people don't take better care of themselves. And what's your best thought on, especially being around all the things in the healthcare world that you've been in and seeing people from phenomenal shape to terrible shape? What's your feeling on why that's such a sad fact, if you will?
If I'm to be honest, I think that the number one reason why we don't take care of ourselves and why there's so many problems is that I think we have a lack of self-love. I think we have a lack of that personal love of ourselves, because if we did, then we would recognize that this is our temple and that we're to look after it. And I think that what's happened is that over the years, there have been so many diets that have been created and so many, different plans that you're supposed to do. I'm a keto girl, so that's how I thrive. But I'm doing a podcast with a very good friend of mine, and she's actually a vegan. So we believe in biochemical individuality. We believe in intuitive eating. We believe in listening to your body and understanding what's right for you. And there's been so much confusion over the years as to what you should and what you shouldn't be eating. And there's been so much bashing of this group and how can you eat that and how can you eat that, and so there's been so much confusion that people just don't know what to do. It's not that they don't want to, it's just that they're so confused about what their body's going to be.
But Jen, that leads to what I think is a great question. You mentioned keto and vegan, and there's different things. So if you mentioned I think chemically individuality, or how the body's different, how does a person that wants that, how do they go about finding out what's best for them?
Yeah, look, I went for years as a yo-yo dieter. My entire life, I was up and down in my weight, and I went through many experiences as a young person, going through bullying and going through, up and down of my weight constantly, having a boyfriend that was constantly putting me down about my weight. And so because of that, I felt like I always had to be on a diet. And the thing is, you don't really know what is right for you until you actually listen within. And this is something that we don't have the capacity to do, or we have the capacity to do it, but we haven't learned how to do it, because we've got so many external factors that are being thrown at us every single day, that we don't actually listen within and go, what actually feels good for my body? I have tried pretty much every diet you can think of. I've even done the horrible, cabbage soup diet, and that was horrible. I've done the beef broth diet. You name it, all of those fad diets. This is going back years when I was a teenager, and there was all the pressures of dieting and the rest of it before I found what was right for me. And I've tried everything, and none of it worked. It would work for, a few weeks, or I'd drop a few kilos, and then all of a sudden I'd put it back on again. And it wasn't until I tested and I figured out what made me feel good and what made me have energy and what made me thrive, that I realized that keto was the way that I could live and I could be happy and I could be healthy, because life is not about deprivation. Life is not about us having to go without anything. There is an abundance of everything in our world. And the moment we start to go, I've got to deprive myself, I've got to just, there's not enough of anything, and then that's when we start to sort of like doubt ourselves. And we need to find that self-love and recognize that you're worth it. And like, I've tried vegetarianism and it doesn't work for me. It's just not a plan that works for me. Whereas my very good friend Colette, she's a vegan, and that works really well for her.
Yeah.
So I think that it's just really digging deep and figuring out what works for you.
Well, and I think too, I wrote this down, the lack of self-love, and you've mentioned that a couple of times. And I think, of course, dealing with gratitude, it all starts so much with that relationship with the person in the mirror.
It does,
and I'm writing some things down, listen to within, maybe need to test some different types of programs and so forth to see what's right for your body chemistry or whatever it might be. But I do think it starts with that relationship with the person in the mirror. And you mentioned lack of self-love, which I think is really, really a key point. And here's the gratitude journal, which I talk about all the time. And what does that do? It helps you focus on everything you have versus what you don't have. Gratitude turns what you have into enough. And so if you're focusing on all the positives, you're naturally going to feel better about who you are. I think your self-like and then maybe self-love, hopefully, will continue to grow. So as a result of that in your life, how has the gratitude piece affected you and impacted how you see the person in the mirror?
Well, I tell you what, gratitude has probably played the biggest part in my life, because everything that I've gone through in my life has just stepped up that gratitude one bit at a time. That's not to say I haven't been through my challenges. You know, I've kind of been on the brink of death twice, and I've recognized that my trust in, if you don't mind me going into a bit into source, and because it does connect, because after living your intentions, which was my passion at the time on mindset, once again, source, and you can call it whatever you like, your higher self, your super conscious, that's what I go by, source, God, whatever you want to call it, it's all the one, and I'm very deeply connected to source. But one day I was once again, source had other ideas for me, and I woke up one morning and I realized living your intentions was no longer my passion, but I was still passionate about mindset. But I realized that there was something deeper than just mindset. Mindset could go deeper. There was more than just learning about your subconscious. We also had source, and we had the divine, and we had how we could work with the divine. And gratitude is probably one of the highest vibrations that you can have. It's one of those techniques that you can use that brings you to the higher levels of consciousness. So it brings you towards that joy and that excitement and that fulfillment, because you start to recognize exactly how much you have in your life. We don't keep focusing on the negatives. We don't focus on lack. We don't focus on poverty. And gratitude allows us to focus on, okay, you know, even the smallest things that we can focus on. If you think that you've got nothing to be grateful for, find the smallest things that you can be grateful for. Find like, I'm so grateful that I've got legs that work, that I can go for a walk today. Or I'm so grateful that I can smell the beautiful flowers that are around me. I'll give you an example. Today, I had to go into work because I work a couple of days a week in a science lab with my husband. And so we had to go to work. It's Easter Friday here. It's Good Friday here. So we had to go across to work for an experiment. And none of the trains were running. So we were left with no trains, and we had to take the replacement bus into the city, which meant it took 3 times as long to get there. And most people would be pretty frustrated. And actually, a lot of people were frustrated. But I actually messaged my daughter on the way home, and I said to her, you know what? I am absolutely loving this bus trip. I said, I have the ability to sit here and to look out the window and to look at the beautiful scenery and all the animals as we go past and everything along the way, that it's, you know, I'm just loving it. And of course she thinks I'm a bit strange, but that's okay. But if your teenager doesn't think you're strange, there's a problem.
Something's wrong. Yeah.
But so it really comes down to how you look at things.
Mm-hmm.
And it comes down to, okay, am I going to stress myself out about something that is not within my control? Or am I going to make the most of it? Am I going to be grateful for all of the amazing experiences that I can see along the way? And And it just brings you to this level of higher vibration. It brings you to this level of connection. And I realized when I started Super Conscious Success that morning that I woke up and realized I was due to pivot again, and I built Super Conscious Success, I realized that the power of connection is my ultimate purpose, is to connect people with one another, but also to connect people with their higher self and with source. Because once you do that, you live a life that is full of joy. It's full of excitement. It's full of flow. And you don't have that constant struggle that we have when we're pushing against things. So without that connection, I'd be in a completely different place to what I am.
So Jen, you mentioned that a couple of times, and I always think, again, thinking about tips, I always want to take away one or two nuggets from somebody. What would you say to somebody that says, well, whether it's my higher self or my God or my higher person or my source, what have you, what's a tip or a way you might suggest they go about doing that? Because you mentioned that a couple of times, and I'm sure some people have asked you, well, how do I do this, that want to do that? What do you suggest?
Yeah, look, my number one tip that would always go for connecting with your higher self is, well, there's lots of them. And in actual fact, I did do a keynote speech, The Power of Connection, for my summit, which has now launched. So anybody that does want to watch that, Super Conscious Success podcast has got that on there as well. But the power of connection, the number one tip I would give would be meditation, without a doubt. Because the problem is in our society today, we are being bombarded with so much in our heads all the time. We have news stories, and that's one thing I recommend, don't watch the news. Because we have news stories that are being thrown at us. We've got so much negativity in our world at the moment. So many people that are living in fear, because we're in a very uncertain place at the moment. And so people are living in fear, and it's making it very difficult for people to connect, because what you have to recognize is that your higher self it lives in love, because that's the highest emotion, and does not live in a state of fear. So if we're fearful, then we cannot connect with our higher self. So we need to let go of the fear. But unfortunately, because we've got so much coming in our heads all the time, we don't have time to sit down and quiet our minds. And so whether that's through meditation, which I absolutely love. I just did an hour meditation before I came on here, just because it really centers you and it allows you to connect with your higher self, so that you can go into interviews and be able to be, on top of the world, and be able to be in a state of joy and excitement. Or you can do your work and you can do it with flow and ease. If you're not into meditation, it's not something that you're used to doing. It does take practice, because unless you're used to quietening the mind, it could take a little bit of time to get used to it.
And Jen, that's a great point, because what do you suggest? It is called a meditation practice. I always thought, like the practice of law, does the attorney not get it right, so they have to keep practicing? But it is it is a meditation practice. But I would be curious about, you just mentioned meditating for an hour. So I'd be curious how you coach somebody as a coach, if you've been in many parts of your life, how you coach somebody to get started. I think the average person that maybe hadn't meditated says, I've heard that's good for me. I don't know if I can commit an hour. But again, I go back to the gratitude journal and I tell people it takes 5 minutes every day. But I don't have 5 minutes. but I know it's good for me, but I don't have 5. And so I'll suggest starting out with just writing a word every day, then maybe the next day a sentence, and then maybe a couple of sentences, and then build up to it. And then maybe you're doing it. So how would you suggest the person that's getting started go about that? Because I would bet the average person isn't just going to sit down for an hour. But how do you suggest they take that? Because I've heard that from so many people about the power of meditation.
Meditation, yes, it is a practice, and it is something that you've got to do consistently, because if you're really wanting to connect with your higher self, which, believe me, once you're in that state, there's no state like it. But start off with 5 minutes. Okay? Start off just sitting down, quietening your mind. Don't be too hard on yourself. If thoughts are coming into your mind, don't worry about it. Just let them push them away, because the ultimate goal is to become an observer to your thoughts. So basically you see your thoughts come in and then you see them go out just as quickly. You're just an observer. You're not even getting involved in it. What tends to happen is when we get started on meditation, we sit down and we go, oh, I've got to be real quiet and I've got to be real focused and I can't have thoughts coming in. My head has to be clear. But of course, as you're doing that, all these thoughts are coming in and you're being really hard on yourself. And you're going, I can't do this and I don't want to do it anymore. But instead of that, you go, okay, I'm just going to go in for 5 minutes. And today I'm just going to focus on something really dull. Like some people will have a fan in the background or a flame that they're looking at or something like that. And then just focus on it. And once you have the focus, then you'll start to be able to do it longer and longer. If you can't do that, do some recorded meditations, some guided meditations. There are some incredible ones out there.
Excellent. Well, and we've got to wrap up in a couple of minutes. And of course, as I told you, it always goes by fast.
Yeah.
But I wrote down a couple of takeaways. Listen to your body. And you mentioned keto and vegan and veganism and things like that. Need to maybe try different types of programs. You just mentioned meditation. One final thought for the listening audience as a takeaway from Jen out of Perth, Australia, that maybe they would be a really gem or a nugget for them.
Oh, wow. There is so many out there. But I would just say as I said, power of connection is so important. Take some time for yourself and try to live in joy. And what I mean by that is find something that you love that is going to excite you every day. Whether that's dancing, whether that's singing, whether it's going out in nature, whatever it is, whatever brings a smile to your face and makes you happy, you do it. Because when we live in joy, then we are living on the state of our higher self and we're able to connect on a much deeper level. Like I said, if you do want to learn more about that, my keynote speech on the Super Conscious Success podcast, and you can register on the summit and see the videos as well, then definitely go ahead and do that, because I've gone into that in a lot more depth.
And send me that link, Jen, and I'll put it in the show notes too.
I will definitely do that. Thank you, David.
You bet. Thank you so much for being on. As I mentioned, it always goes by so fast, especially when I have enlightened guests such as Jennifer Matthews. But living in joy, I really like that too. And so that's kind of it for today. But I mentioned that listen to your body and the different types of meditation. I hear that from so many people. But also a couple of reminders, wherever you get your podcasts on Apple or Spotify or Google, please subscribe. And if you like what you hear, give us a 5-star rating. And as I mentioned, I do the keynote speaking and my coaching, which is all available on thatgratitudeguy.com. And there are a lot more contact information there. And one thing I wanted to mention too, I send out a Monday Morning Minute every Monday, coincidentally, my 1-minute message to people on gratitude. And if you're interested in signing up for that, you just text the words Gratitude Guy, all one word, to 22828. That's Gratitude Guy to 22828, and it'll sign you up. On April 16th, a couple weeks from today, my guest is Michael Charest out of Massachusetts. He's got some great stories and a really interesting person. And following me directly is the Empowered Through Health podcast with Diane Solano. And she is just tremendous, and where you can take your health to the next level, featuring a different health topic every single week. So that is it, Jen. Thank you again so much for being here from Perth, Australia, a long ways away, a day and a half. And I do appreciate you tuning in, I should say. I am that gratitude guy. Remember, be grateful and never quit. So long.
Thanks, David.
You bet.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Jen.
Thank you for listening to That Gratitude Guy podcast with David George Brooke, where living with gratitude turns what you have into enough. Transformation starts now, and you have everything you need to achieve great things. In a world that is constantly changing, there is motivation and inspiration right in front of us, and you can find yours right now. Don't wait. Visit thatgratitudeguy.com to get started living with gratitude today.
Views expressed on this program are those of the host, guests, and callers, and do not necessarily reflect the views of the station, its management, or advertisers. You're listening to Transformation Talk Radio.